When I called to ask when the wedding was, she said, "We already got married, Mom. We only invited people who really matter. Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic." I just smiled and hung up. 3 days later, I left a wedding gift at their door that made her husband scream non-stop. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Sheila Person from South Carolina. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. It started 18 months ago when my daughter, Lily, brought home Marcus for the first time. I'm Rose, 63 years old, and until last week, I thought I knew my daughter completely. We had movie nights every Friday. She'd bring popcorn and we'd watch old romantic comedies while she told me about her week. Her job at the art gallery, her painting classes, her dreams of opening her own studio someday. When she met Marcus, I wanted to be excited for her. She'd been single for almost a year after her last relationship ended badly. "Mom, he's amazing," she'd said that first evening, practically bouncing with excitement. "He makes me feel like a real artist." I'd spent all afternoon making her favorite chicken and dumplings, the recipe her grandmother taught me. Marcus arrived carrying expensive wine and wearing a designer jacket that probably cost more than I made in a month. He was tall and handsome with perfect teeth and a smile that seemed too practiced. During dinner, he talked about his real estate business and asked detailed questions about my waterfront cottage. He praised my cooking, complimented my antique furniture, and seemed fascinated by the family photos on my mantel. Perfect guest behavior that should have felt natural but instead felt like a performance. "Your daughter has such artistic talent," he told me while helping with dessert. "You must be so proud of everything she's accomplished." I was proud. Lily had worked her way through art school, built a reputation in the local gallery scene, and saved enough to rent a cute studio apartment downtown. She was creative, independent, and had never asked anyone for money. Everything I'd hoped she'd become. But that evening something bothered me. Maybe it was how he kept steering conversations back to money and property. Or how he mentioned my cottage's ocean view 5 different times during dinner. I owned a small waterfront cottage that my parents had left me, a peaceful place where Lily and I spent summer weekends painting and collecting shells. "He seems very interested in our family history," I told my neighbor Helen the next morning. "That's wonderful, Rose. It shows he wants to belong." I hoped that was true. I really did. But something about Marcus's intense questions reminded me of my ex-husband, David, Lily's stepfather. David had asked similar questions when we first dated, seeming fascinated by my life and property. That charm had lasted exactly until our wedding papers were signed. Over the following months, I watched Marcus slowly take over every part of Lily's world. He had strong opinions about her art, her friends, even her relationship with me. Our Friday movie nights became monthly visits, then rare occasions when Marcus was traveling for work. "Marcus thinks I should spend more time developing my artistic voice," Lily explained when I asked why she seemed different. "He says real artists need solitude to grow creatively." That should have worried me more, but I convinced myself I was being overprotective. Lily was 26. Smart enough to make her own choices. If Marcus made her happy, I should support that. But then came the art show I wasn't told about. I discovered Lily's first solo exhibition the way strangers did, through the local newspaper's art section. A full-page article about emerging artists featured a large photo of Lily standing next to her paintings with a headline, "Local Artists Breakthrough Show. Opens this weekend." She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen, smiling radiantly beside canvases I'd never seen her work on. The article mentioned how her boyfriend Marcus had provided financial support and gallery connections that made the show possible. 47 people had shared the newspaper's Facebook post. Comments from art lovers saying they couldn't wait to attend. None of them wondering where her family was because they probably assumed I already knew. I stared at that newspaper for 20 minutes, my morning tea growing cold as I realized my daughter had achieved her biggest dream and I'd learned about it from a newspaper. I called her immediately. Oh Rose, I'm so sorry. Lily's voice was breathless, panicked. I wanted to tell you, but everything happened so fast. Marcus arranged everything through his gallery contacts, and we only confirmed the dates yesterday. The show opens tonight and I was gonna call you this morning, I promise. Congratulations, honey. I forced enthusiasm into my voice. Tell me about the paintings. And she did. For 15 minutes, she described her artwork, how Marcus had encouraged her to try new techniques, how his connections had made this opportunity possible, how his business success meant she could focus on art instead of worrying about rent. When's the opening reception? I asked. Tonight at 7. It's going to be small, just serious art collectors and gallery professionals. Can I drive over around 6 to help you set up? Another pause. Much longer this time. Mom, about that. Marcus feels strongly that tonight should be about professional networking. His collector friends expect a certain atmosphere, and he thinks having family there might change the dynamic. I felt ice form in my chest. What does that mean exactly? Means. This is really about business connections and serious art buyers. It's not a family celebration, it's a career opportunity. Marcus knows the art world better than we do, and he thinks it's better if we keep this professional. Marcus thinks. Everything revolved around what Marcus thinks. He kept my voice steady. And what do you think? I think Marcus has opened doors for me that I never could have opened alone, and I don't want to mess this up by not following his advice. You understand, right? We'll celebrate privately later, just you and me. That was 5 months ago. We never had that private celebration. In fact, I'd barely seen Marcus since then. The few times he'd come by, he'd been polite but condescending, like I was Lily's elderly relative he had to tolerate rather than the mother who'd worked 2 jobs to support her art dreams when her father disappeared. The wedding planning happened without me. Lily would mention things casually. They'd hired a wedding planner, chosen a photographer, ordered flowers. But when I offered to help with costs or asked about traditions, I got vague answers about how Marcus was handling details or his family had preferences. 2 months ago, I asked about the date so I could request vacation time from my job at the local flower shop. We're thinking late September, Lily said. Probably the last weekend. Marcus is coordinating with his business calendar. That sounds beautiful. September on the coast is perfect weather. Are you considering the cottage for the ceremony? I've always imagined you getting married there. Oh no, Mom. Marcus wants something more upscale. More impressive for his business associates and family. The rejection hurt more than expected. Lily had always loved our cottage. As a teenager, she'd painted pictures of wedding ceremonies on our little beach, telling me she'd get married there someday with wildflowers and candles glowing at sunset. Course, I said whatever makes you both happy. But I wasn't consulted about venues. I wasn't included in dress shopping trips that Lily posted about on social media. Marcus's sister-in-law, beaming beside her in every photo from bridal boutiques. I was becoming an outsider in my own daughter's biggest moments. The devastating phone call came exactly 2 weeks ago. Lily called while I was watering my garden, a peaceful Thursday afternoon that would forever mark when everything fell apart. Mom, I need to discuss something important and I need you to stay calm about it. Those words never led anywhere good. But I set down my watering can and sat on my porch swing. What's happening, sweetheart? Marcus has been reading about marriage psychology and healthy family relationships. He believes it's crucial that we establish our independence as a married couple right from the start. I felt that familiar dread creeping in. What kind of independence? Well, he's noticed that I still rely on you emotionally when I should be turning to my husband for support. Like calling you when I'm anxious about work instead of discussing things with him. He thinks that pattern might damage our marriage. Lily, calling your mother for support isn't wrong. It's completely normal. But is it? Marcus showed me research about women who can't separate from their mothers and how that ruins marriages. I don't want to be that kind of wife, Mom. I recognized the manipulation immediately. Marcus was cutting Lily off from her support system, making her believe isolation was healthy. What does this mean in practical terms? I asked, dreading the answer. It means we need to create some distance, fewer phone calls, more space for Marcus and me to develop our own bond. And she hesitated. Marcus believes we should start our own holiday traditions this year instead of always doing what we've always done. Holidays. We'd celebrated every Thanksgiving together since her father left us. It was sacred time, just Lily and me cooking together all morning, sharing stories, watching the parade while our turkey roasted. Understand. My voice sounded hollow. Is there anything else? Actually, yes. Marcus has concerns about the cottage situation. What concerns? Well, you know how I've always assumed I'd inherit it eventually. But Marcus pointed out that creates weird dynamics. Like he feels uncomfortable using it because it's not really ours. It's yours. And if we ever disagreed with you about something, we might lose access to our vacation spot. I held the phone tighter. Are you asking me to transfer ownership to you? Not exactly. Marcus thinks it would be healthier if we established our own vacation traditions, found our own special places that belong to us as a couple. He doesn't want to feel like he's being watched and judged when we're supposed to be relaxing together. Being watched by me, the woman who'd seen him maybe 6 times this year. Lily, that cottage has been in our family for generations. It's where you painted your first real artwork, where we've spent countless summers together creating memories. I know, Mom, and those memories mean everything to me. But I'm building a new life with Marcus now, and he needs to feel like we have spaces that are completely ours. Spaces that excluded me entirely. I ended that conversation promising to consider everything and respect their need for independence. But privately I was already planning. Not revenge exactly. More like investigation. I was going to discover exactly who Marcus really was and what he truly wanted from my daughter. It took me exactly 10 days of careful research and conversations with Lily's college roommates to uncover Marcus's true nature. Lily wasn't his first target. There was Jennifer, whose family owned a successful catering business. She'd also been isolated from her support system before their engagement ended when her uncle discovered Marcus's secret debts. Before Jennifer, there was Amanda, whose inheritance Marcus had tried to access before her grandmother intervened. Marcus Chen wasn't just controlling. He was a calculated predator who specialized in creative, trusting women with family assets. And Lily, with her artistic talent and expectation of inheriting waterfront property, was his newest target. That's when I began planning my wedding gift. The life-changing phone call came last Wednesday morning while I was arranging flowers from my garden. Lily's name appeared on my screen, and for just a moment I felt that old happiness before remembering how distant we'd become. Her voice sounded mechanical, rehearsed. Hello, darling. How are things? I'm calling to tell you that Marcus and I got married yesterday. It was a small ceremony, just immediate family and close friends. My world stopped yesterday. But I thought you were planning an October wedding. We decided to do something more intimate. Marcus felt like a big wedding was too stressful, too expensive. We found a lovely venue overlooking the harbor and kept everything simple. Simple and secret, apparently. Congratulations. I somehow managed to say. I'm sure it was beautiful. It was perfect, really. Marcus's parents were there and his brother flew in from Chicago. My college friend Amy was my maid of honor and Marcus's business partner was his best man. The photographer captured everything beautifully. She was reciting details like reading from a checklist, not describing the happiest day of her life. But what struck me most was who she wasn't mentioning. That sounds wonderful, Lily. I'm happy for you both. Thanks. Oh, and Mom, Marcus and I were hoping you could let us use the cottage for our honeymoon. We didn't have time to plan a real trip with the quick wedding, so we thought it would be perfect for a romantic getaway. There it was. The real purpose of her call. Not to share her joy, not to include me in this milestone, but to request access to property they'd already convinced themselves they deserved. The cottage keys, I repeated slowly. But Marcus is really looking forward to seeing it. I've described it to him so many times over the months. He's especially curious about the renovations and the current market value in that area. Market value? How romantic for a honeymoon. Lily, when you say you got married yesterday, do you mean you had a ceremony and signed legal papers? Both. We got our license last week and had the ceremony yesterday afternoon. Why are you asking? Just making sure I understand. And you didn't think to invite your mother to witness your wedding? There was silence. Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. It was Marcus's choice to keep things small, and after our conversations about boundaries, I assumed you'd respect our decision. I respect it completely. And I did. I understood that my daughter had married a man who convinced her that excluding her mother was reasonable. I understood that Marcus had successfully isolated Lily from the one person who might have seen through his act. So you'll send the keys. We're planning to drive up tomorrow morning. Absolutely, sweetheart. I'll make sure you get exactly what you need. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at my flower arrangement and thinking about patterns. Marcus followed patterns. He isolated women from their families, convinced them to provide access to their assets, then probably disappeared when someone got suspicious or when he'd taken what he wanted. But Marcus had made one serious mistake. He'd assumed I was just another naive mother who would quietly accept being erased from her daughter's life. He'd underestimated what happens when you corner a woman and threaten the person she loves most. I spent the rest of that afternoon making phone calls and visiting important places. By dinner time, I had everything needed to give Marcus exactly what he'd earned. Not revenge exactly. Justice. The wedding gift I was preparing would be far more meaningful than anything Lily might find in a store. It would be the gift of clarity. I've always believed the most valuable presents are ones that change lives forever. So when I drove to Lily and Marcus's apartment that Thursday morning, I made sure my wedding gift would create unforgettable memories. The package was elegantly wrapped in gold paper with a cream-colored ribbon. Inside was a wooden box containing several items I'd spent the previous day carefully gathering. Marcus was going to be thrilled to learn about his new family responsibilities. I left it by their door with a card. Congratulations on your marriage. Every new husband should understand his wife's family obligations. With love, Rose. Then I drove home and waited patiently. The call came at 3:22 in the afternoon. Lily's number but Marcus's voice, and he was absolutely furious. What kind of sick joke is this? You demented old woman. How dare you send us this garbage? I was arranging fresh flowers and didn't even look up. Hello, Marcus. I see you opened your wedding present. This isn't funny. This is harassment. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm confused, dear. What exactly would you complain about? That your mother-in-law gave you a wedding gift containing legal documents and official paperwork. In the background, I could hear Lily asking what was wrong, begging him to explain what was happening. Marcus, calm down. Let me handle this. No, this woman is completely insane. She's trying to destroy our marriage on purpose. I couldn't help smiling. Marcus, surely you're not upset about me sharing some important family information. I thought you'd want to know about your new responsibilities as Lily's husband. The truth was, I discovered something absolutely fascinating while researching Marcus's background. During my visit to the county courthouse, I'd learned that my cottage wasn't just valuable waterfront property. It was also subject to a very old legal restriction that I'd completely forgotten about. A restriction that would become Marcus's worst nightmare. The documents I'd included in the wedding gift explained everything clearly. My cottage sat on land that had been in my family for 4 generations, originally purchased by my great-grandfather in 1923. But there was a catch written into the original deed. A family preservation clause that required any heir who inherited the property to maintain it exclusively for family use. No commercial development, no selling to outsiders, and most importantly, no legal access for anyone outside the bloodline. The cottage could only be inherited by direct descendants, and any marriage partner would have zero legal claim to the property, even in divorce proceedings. But that wasn't the most interesting part. The most interesting part was what happened if an heir tried to give unauthorized access to non-family members. According to the legal clause, any attempt to transfer usage rights to someone outside the bloodline would immediately trigger the property to revert to a family trust, managed by my cousin Thomas, who lived in California. and had very strict ideas about preserving family heritage. Marcus, I said sweetly into the phone. I also included contact information for my cousin Thomas and the family lawyer who manages our trust. They're very excited to meet you and discuss the cottage's legal restrictions. Apparently, as Lily's husband, you'll need to sign several documents acknowledging that you have no claim to the property and agreeing never to use it for business purposes. The shouting stopped suddenly. You're lying, he said, but his voice had changed. Completely. The anger was gone, replaced by something that sounded like terror. I never lie, dear. I'm a retired librarian. We're trained to be very careful about facts. But don't trust me. I'm sure Thomas will be happy to explain everything when he visits next week to inspect the property and meet you properly. I could hear Lily in the background asking about legal restrictions, wondering what documents I was talking about. Oh, and Marcus, the cottage keys are in the box too. Consider them my wedding gift to you both. I'm sure you'll find it very educational to read through all those legal papers while enjoying the ocean view. Then I hung up and continued arranging my flowers. The next few hours were going to be absolutely fascinating. Lily called me at 7:15 that evening. Her voice was shaky from crying and I could hear Marcus pacing angrily in their apartment. Mom, what did you do? I was sitting in my reading chair, enjoying a cup of chamomile tea and feeling calmer than I had in months. Gave you both a wedding gift, darling. Did you read through all the paperwork? I read enough. Marcus says it's all fake, that you're making up legal restrictions to control our lives. What do you think, Lily? There was a long pause. I think I need you to explain what these documents mean. The cottage really has those rules about family only. Absolutely. Your great-great-grandfather was very specific about keeping the land in family hands. He watched too many families lose their heritage to outsiders and made sure ours would be protected. Another pause. And Marcus can't ever own any part of it. I could hear Marcus getting closer to the phone. His voice muffled but clearly furious. Never. Even if you inherited it tomorrow, Marcus would have no legal rights to the property. The family trust makes sure of that. And if we tried to give him access anyway, the property would immediately transfer to Thomas's management and you'd lose all rights to it. Your great-great-grandfather was very thorough about protecting our heritage. That's impossible. Marcus has been planning. She stopped herself. Madison, when's the last time Marcus discussed concrete wedding plans with you? When's the last time he showed you a signed venue contract or introduced you to the wedding planner? Silence. In the background, I could hear Marcus demanding that Lily hang up immediately, telling her I was lying and trying to ruin their happiness. The family lawyer wants to meet with both of you next week, sweetheart. As my heir, you need to understand your responsibilities regarding the cottage. They'll explain everything properly. Next week. Lily's voice was barely audible. Thomas is driving down from Boston specifically to meet Marcus and welcome him to the family. He takes the legal restrictions very seriously and wants to make sure Marcus understands his position. Now I could hear Marcus clearly. He was telling Lily that I was manipulating her, that I was jealous of their happiness, that I was making up legal problems because I couldn't stand seeing her independent. Lily, I said gently, ask yourself this. If these legal documents are fake, why is Marcus so worried? If there are no restrictions, wouldn't he want to meet Thomas and the lawyer to clear everything up? The line became quiet except for Lily's breathing. There's something else, I continued. The family lawyer also discovered something interesting about Marcus's previous relationships. 2 other engagements that ended suddenly when families discovered financial irregularities. Both women had family property or inheritance expectations. Stop, Lily whispered. I have their contact information if you'd like to speak with them directly. The lawyer thinks you should know about the pattern before you sign any legal papers with Marcus. Said stop. The line went dead. I set my phone down and looked out at my garden in the fading light. Tomorrow Lily would have to decide what to believe. Tomorrow, she would choose between the man who had isolated her from everyone who loved her and the truth that could save her future. But tonight, for the first time in months, Marcus Chen was going to sleep knowing that his carefully planned scheme was falling apart. And I was going to rest peacefully, knowing my daughter finally had the information she needed to protect herself. The gift of truth really does keep giving. Lily didn't contact me that night or the following day. But on Sunday afternoon, I found her sitting in my driveway, still wearing the same clothes from Friday. Her hair was messy, her eyes were puffy, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in days. "Tell me everything," she said without any greeting. I made hot chocolate and we sat in my living room, the same room where she'd done art projects as a child, where we'd planned her college applications, where we'd shared countless conversations about her dreams and fears. Now we were going to talk about how the man she'd married was a fraud. "Marcus left yesterday morning," she said, staring at her mug. "Everything, and said he needed space to think. He told me you were sabotaging our marriage with lies and that if I trusted you over him, maybe we weren't compatible after all. Classic manipulation. Make the victim feel responsible for the relationship problems." "Where did he go?" "I don't know. He shut off his phone and blocked me on social media." "But Mom." She looked up with tears streaming down her face. "Found something terrible." Lily pulled out a stack of papers from her bag. "After Marcus left, I searched through his desk, his computer, everything he'd left behind. Found these." She spread printed emails across my coffee table. They were messages between Marcus and someone named David Kim, discussing property investments and targeting women with inheritance potential. The dates went back 18 months, long before Marcus had supposedly met Lily by accident. "There's more," Lily said, her voice growing steadier. "Called Jennifer yesterday. The woman from the lawyer's report." I raised my eyebrows. "What did she tell you?" "Everything. How Marcus researched her family's business, how he isolated her from her relatives, how he convinced her to add him to her bank accounts, even tried to get her to change her will. Her uncle hired a detective and discovered Marcus's whole operation. When they confronted him, he vanished that same night." Lily showed me text messages on her phone. "Jennifer connected me with Amanda too. Identical story, Mom. Exact same approach. He finds creative women with family money, charms them completely, cuts them off from their families, then tries to access their assets." I reached over and hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry you went through this, honey. Don't apologize. You tried to protect me and I refused to listen. I chose to believe a man I'd known for 18 months over the mother who raised me alone." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Jennifer told me something else that made everything clear. Marcus actually researched us before he ever showed up at that coffee shop where we met. He knew about the cottage, knew about Dad leaving us, knew about you being widowed. Coffee shop meeting. Lily had always believed it was destiny when she'd accidentally spilled coffee on Marcus's laptop, leading to their first conversation. Turns out destiny had nothing to do with it. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. Lily looked at me with determination I hadn't seen since she was a teenager, standing up to bullies at school. Fierce, angry, ready to fight back. "I'm going to make sure he never hurts anyone else," she said firmly. "But I'm going to need your help, Mom." For the first time in 18 months, my daughter was asking for my support instead of pushing me away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt genuinely hopeful. "Tell me what you need, sweetheart." The strategy we created was elegantly simple. Marcus would return eventually. Men like him always do when they think the danger has passed. He'd apologize, claim he'd been confused or overwhelmed by family pressure. He'd try to smooth things over and continue his original plan of accessing Lily's inheritance. But when he returned, we'd be ready with backup. Lily contacted the family lawyer that Monday and scheduled a meeting with Thomas and the cottage trust administrator. The news was even better than expected. Not only was the cottage completely protected from Marcus's schemes, but his attempts to manipulate Lily into giving him access could be considered fraud. "The family trust takes these matters very seriously," the administrator explained during our conference call. "Any attempt to circumvent the bloodline restrictions is considered a violation of the original deed. We have legal grounds to pursue charges against anyone who tries to manipulate an heir into breaking the trust terms. The administrator also connected Lily with a fraud specialist who had been tracking Marcus's pattern. Detective Sarah Morgan had been building a case based on complaints from Jennifer and Amanda's families. We've been waiting for the right evidence to move forward, Detective Morgan told us during our meeting. Your situation provides the final proof we need. If you're willing to cooperate, we can arrange a controlled confrontation when he returns. Lily agreed without hesitation. She wanted Marcus held accountable, not just for what he'd done to her, but for his treatment of Jennifer and Amanda and whoever else he might target next. Thursday afternoon, Marcus sent Lily a text message. Can we please talk? I miss you terribly. I'm ready to come home and work things out. Lily showed me the message. Should I respond? Tell him you miss him too and that you're sorry for overreacting. Tell him you realize I was just being interfering and jealous. She typed the response, her hands shaking with anger but her words perfectly crafted to appeal to Marcus's ego. He replied within minutes, saying he'd be home Friday evening and they could start over fresh. Detective Morgan briefed us Thursday evening. The apartment will have surveillance equipment. Lily, you'll be wearing a recording device and will have officers stationed nearby for safety. All you need to do is get him to discuss his plans for the cottage and admit he researched your family before meeting you. What if he doesn't confess anything? Lily asked nervously. Then we proceed with the evidence we already have, but a recorded admission would help us pursue charges related to his other victims. Detective Morgan assured us the plan was safe. Friday evening arrived quicker than expected. I sat in my garden pretending to read while actually watching my phone constantly, waiting for updates. Detective Morgan had given me an emergency number, though they promised Lily's apartment was completely secure. At 6:28 p.m., my phone buzzed with Lily's text. He's here. At 7:45 p.m., he brought roses and chocolate, playing the perfect apologetic husband. At 8:33 p.m., he's discussing future plans, asking about the cottage trust documents. At 9:18 p.m., got him to admit he investigated our family before meeting me. Police moving in right now. I set down my phone and poured myself some wine. Marcus Chen's predatory career was officially finished. But somehow I knew the most satisfying part was still coming. The local newspaper covered the story by Tuesday morning. Local man arrested in marriage fraud scheme was the headline in our town's weekly paper. They didn't use Lily's name, calling her only the most recent victim. But Marcus's photograph was prominently featured. He looked exactly like what he was, a common criminal whose charm had finally failed him. Lily came over for dinner that Tuesday, bringing homemade soup and looking healthier than she had in months. Detective Morgan called this morning, she said, setting bowls on my table. Marcus has been formally charged with fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy across 3 states. His bail was set at $300,000. I almost dropped my spoon. $300,000. Apparently he's considered dangerous because he has a history of targeting vulnerable women and disappearing when caught. His parents can't afford bail and his bank accounts have been frozen during the investigation. We ate our soup quietly for several minutes before Lily spoke again. Mom, I need to ask you something and I want complete honesty. I put down my spoon and looked at her. What do you need to know? How long have you suspected Marcus was lying about everything? I considered softening the truth but decided Lily deserved honesty. I had concerns from our first meeting, but I didn't have real proof until about 6 weeks ago. That's when I hired the private detective. 6 weeks ago. Lily nodded slowly. Right around when I told you about needing more independence from family. Exactly. And you didn't warn me directly because you knew I wouldn't believe you. I met her eyes. Would you have listened? She shook her head sadly. No, I would have thought you were jealous or trying to interfere. Marcus had me completely convinced that you were the problem in my life. She paused, stirring her soup thoughtfully. How did you know to check the cottage's legal restrictions? I remembered your great-great-grandfather's stories about protecting family land from outsiders. When I realized Marcus was targeting the cottage, I knew there had to be legal protections we could use. Lily was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with regret. I was horrible to you, Mom. I said cruel things, excluded you from my wedding because he convinced me it was mature. I believed his ideas about what family should look like instead of trusting my own heart. I'm so ashamed. I reached across and took her hand. You were manipulated by a professional con artist. That's not your fault, honey. But I should have trusted my instincts. I'm educated, independent, successful. How did I fall for his lies? Because he specifically targeted those qualities. He found a strong, creative woman and convinced her that her independence was actually dependence. That's what these men do, Lily. They don't prey on weak people. They target people who have things they want. Lily squeezed my hand. How do I fix what I broke between us? You already have. You're here, you're safe, and you're free from him. That's all I ever wanted for you. We finished dinner and spent the evening looking through Lily's old sketchbooks. She pointed out drawings of cottage weddings and asked me to tell stories about her childhood summers there. It felt like we were rebuilding something precious that had been damaged. That night, as Lily was preparing to leave, she stopped at my front door. Mom, there's something I want to ask you. Anything, sweetheart. She smiled, and for the first time in 18 months, it was the bright, genuine smile I remembered from her childhood. Would you help me plan a real wedding someday? When I find someone who actually loves me, someone who adores you too, because anyone who can't appreciate my mother doesn't deserve me. I felt tears fill my eyes. I would be absolutely honored. And Mom, about the cottage. I know Marcus made me say terrible things about not being good enough. The truth is, I've always dreamed of getting married there, barefoot on our little beach, with wildflowers and candles glowing at sunset, just like I used to draw when I was small. It would be absolutely perfect, I said, holding her close. As we said goodnight, I thought about the daughter I'd raised. Lily had been temporarily lost, deceived by a skilled manipulator who had studied her weaknesses and exploited her trusting nature. But in the end, the strength I'd nurtured in her since childhood had returned. She'd found her way back to herself and back to me. Marcus Chen had made one critical error in his planning. He'd assumed that separating Lily from her family would make her easier to control and manipulate. Instead, it had only made our reunion stronger, and our combined determination more powerful than he could have anticipated. The predator had become the hunted, and justice had been delivered by the very women he'd tried to exploit. Some wedding gifts truly do keep giving, and the gift of truth, once revealed, can never be hidden again. The trial began 2 months later, and it exceeded all my expectations. The family lawyer had been correct about our legal position. The cottage trust's restrictions were ironclad, and Marcus's attempts to circumvent them constituted attempted fraud against a family trust. But more importantly, the prosecution had assembled a comprehensive case that exposed Marcus's entire criminal operation. Jennifer Chen flew in from Denver to testify, looking confident and determined in a professional blazer. Amanda Walsh drove down from Portland, clearly nervous but resolved to see justice served. Together with Lily, they presented evidence of a systematic predator who had perfected his technique through years of practice targeting vulnerable women. I attended every day of testimony, watching my daughter speak her truth with courage and dignity. She testified about the isolation tactics, the manipulation, how Marcus had convinced her to doubt her instincts and reject her family's love. She spoke clearly and calmly, never breaking down, never letting emotion cloud her facts. Marcus's defense team tried to portray him as a confused young man who had made poor romantic choices but wasn't a serious criminal. That defense crumbled when Detective Morgan presented evidence of Marcus's detailed research into each victim, including surveillance notes about Lily taken weeks before their supposed accidental meeting. The most damaging testimony came from an unexpected witness. On the 4th day, the prosecution called David Kim, the man who had been corresponding with Marcus about targeting strategies. Kim had been arrested as an accomplice and agreed to testify for a reduced sentence. Mr. Chen contacted me in early 2023. Kim testified, asking for advice about accessing family trust properties through marriage. When I explained the legal complications, he told me he was developing a systematic approach to overcome those obstacles. What did he mean by systematic approach? The prosecutor asked. He said he was going to marry someone with inheritance rights to protected property. He showed me research about various families and explained how he would gain access to their assets through marriage and manipulation. Kim continued. He had identified several potential targets based on their family financial situations and personal vulnerabilities. He showed me social media profiles and detailed plans for approaching each woman. Was one of those targets Lily Thompson? He said she was perfect because she was artistically talented but financially dependent on family support, close to her mother who owned valuable property, and inexperienced with serious relationships. I watched Lily's face as she heard herself described as a calculated target, a mark to be exploited for financial gain. The hurt in her eyes was heartbreaking, but underneath I saw something else. Pure, focused fury at the man who had studied her like a predator studies prey. Marcus's lawyers objected constantly, but the damage was complete. The jury now understood that Marcus hadn't simply made poor relationship choices. He had executed a deliberate multi-year plan to manipulate Lily into marriage so he could steal her family's cottage through legal trickery. When Kim finished testifying, Marcus looked defeated, slumped in his chair like the pathetic criminal he'd always been underneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. The jury deliberated for 2.5 hours. Guilty on all charges. The verdict rang through the courtroom as Marcus Chen's elaborate scheme finally collapsed completely. Conspiracy, attempted fraud, criminal manipulation, and a new charge the prosecutor had added based on Kim's testimony, attempted theft from a family trust through fraudulent marriage. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in state prison and ordered him to pay full damages to all victims, totaling over $400,000 in legal fees, therapy costs, and punitive damages. Since Marcus had no legitimate assets of his own, this meant he would leave prison completely broke and facing years of wage garnishment. Lily delivered a victim impact statement during sentencing that left the entire courtroom silent. Marcus Chen didn't just try to steal my inheritance, she said, looking directly at him as he sat in handcuffs. He stole 18 months of my life, my relationship with my mother, my ability to trust my own judgment, and my belief in authentic love. He convinced me that the person who truly cared about me was my enemy while he systematically planned to rob my family blind. She paused, gathering strength, then continued with steel in her voice. But here's what Marcus didn't understand about the women he targeted. We're not helpless victims waiting to be rescued. We're strong, intelligent women who were temporarily deceived by a professional liar. And when we discovered the truth, we didn't just walk away quietly. We fought back together. Marcus stared at the floor during Lily's entire statement. But I noticed his hands trembling when she said, I hope you spend every day of your sentence remembering the lives you tried to destroy and the women who were strong enough to stop you. After sentencing, we gathered outside the courthouse. Lily, Jennifer, Amanda, Detective Morgan, and me. The media wanted statements, but we politely declined. This wasn't about publicity or revenge. It was about protecting future victims. Jennifer hugged Lily goodbye. Thank you for being brave enough to wear that recording device. Without your evidence, we might never have gotten convictions. Amanda squeezed my hand. Thank you for not giving up on your daughter. If you hadn't investigated Marcus's background, he'd still be out there targeting new victims. Detective Morgan gave us her business card. You've helped us stop a predator who could have hurt many more families. The department appreciates your cooperation, but more importantly, you should be proud of your bravery. As everyone dispersed, Lily and I walked to our cars in peaceful silence. Finally, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Mom, I have something important to ask you. What is it, darling? She smiled, that radiant smile I'd missed for 18 months. Would you help me plan a real wedding ceremony someday? When I find someone who actually loves me, someone who treasures you too, because anyone who can't appreciate my mother isn't worth my time. I felt my heart overflow with joy. I would be absolutely honored, sweetheart. And Mom, about the cottage. I know Marcus made me say awful things about it not being special enough. The truth is, I've always dreamed of having my real wedding there. Barefoot on our beach, with wildflowers and fairy lights strung between the trees, exactly like I used to plan when I was little. It would be absolutely magical, I said, embracing her tightly. As we drove away from the courthouse, I reflected on the woman I'd raised. Lily had been temporarily lost, deceived by a master manipulator who had targeted her kindness and used it against her. But ultimately, the inner strength I'd seen in her as a child had resurged. She'd found her way back to herself and back to me. Marcus Chen had made one fatal miscalculation. He'd assumed that isolating Lily from her family would make her vulnerable and controllable. Instead, it had only made our eventual reunion more powerful, and our combined anger more devastating than he could have imagined. The hunter had become the hunted, and justice had been served by the very women he'd attempted to destroy. Some wedding gifts really do keep giving, and the gift of truth, once unwrapped, can never be taken back again. Thanks for watching Granny's Voice. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments below. Your experiences matter to all of us.